Good morning, everybody. At least it's morning for the majority of us. If you're on the East Coast, I guess it's noon there. But I'm so glad that you're joining me this morning. My name is Diane Bailey. I'm the creator of the Open the Door to Tai Chi system. And this morning, we have my friend and colleague, Ryan Glatt, presenting Brain Health and Tai Chi. Ryan and I met about a year ago through the FAI, the Functional Aging Institute, and we realized immediately how our two studies, both Tai Chi and brain health, impact each other. Ryan's the director of programming at the Pacific Brain Health Center and works at creating programs and education for the application of exercise to help delay cognitive decline. He's recently created a brain health program for fitness professionals that will be available soon, and you'll hear about that at the end of the presentation. Best of all, I know that Ryan is very familiar with Tai Chi. I know he studied Qigong. I'm very excited to hear what he has to say today about Tai Chi and brain health. I know that you guys will all be excited with this as well. If you have any questions as they come up, hold on to those and we'll take those questions at the end. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to let you take it over.
Great, Diane. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here, and Tai Chi is something that I hold very near and dear to my heart, and as well as my brain. I certainly have practiced it a little bit in the past, as well as several months of Qigong, and I'm starting to recognize myself as I look at the literature that Tai Chi is something that shouldn't just be a part of my program more regularly, but should be a part of everyone's program, both from a physical standpoint and a cognitive and brain health standpoint. So I'm happy to talk about that and excited to do so. Just a little bit more on my background. I'm approaching about 10 years as a personal trainer, a health coach, and a body worker. And about 2 years ago, I kind of, I wouldn't say left those professions, but sort of stopped adopting the traditional model of those professions to pursue a master's degree in neuroscience and really implement exercise and health coaching programs for brain health outcomes specifically. And Tai Chi is a very important part of that. So I'm excited to tell you why that is and describe a little bit more of how that might work. So we'll go on to the next slide here. I think the most important thing to start to realize before we talk about the benefits of Tai Chi or any intervention on the brain is to recognize the normal course of cognitive aging and what we call the cognitive trajectory. And I think what's sort of a reality grounding realization is that everybody you train, and including yourself, is somewhere on this curve or somewhere on this timeline, whether it's before the preclinical, and we'll explain what that means. I assume none of you have dementia. I assume none or not many of you have mild cognitive impairment. But at the most, probably most of you yourselves, if you have any cognitive issues, for me, I have ADHD. For other people, it could be subjective memory issues. They would be in the preclinical phase or prior. You might not even have a memory problem or an attention problem, and you might be labeled as what I call a worried well, someone who's very well and healthy, you don't have any symptoms, but you're worried about protecting the health of your brain and staving off cognitive decline as long as you can. Now, if you look at the top of this chart here, you see cognitive decline on the left side. The lower it is, the worse your cognitive abilities and brain health. And we see time on the right side, or the bottom side, moving towards the right in terms of years. And so what I like about this chart is the top, you see two green lines. There's not one course. The cognitive trajectory is influenced by a variety of different factors: environmental, biological, health-related, genetic, etc. And this line, or these lines at the top here, would indicate healthy aging, the green ones. So the green ones represent healthy aging. But I think if you asked anyone, if you could be the bottom green one or the top green one, you'd probably pick the top green one. And most people are probably on that middle green one right there. They're sort of, recommending and adhering to recommendations for brain health in general, eating healthier and exercising more and trying to get their sleep in order. But they may not be as aggressive as they would be in a weight loss program or a mobility program or an athletic performance program for these brain health outcomes. So I think it's important to realize if we as health and wellness professionals can frame the value of brain health as a primary outcome or even a secondary outcome as a result of a fitness program or a health and wellness program, we can hopefully start to get people to modify their cognitive trajectories, either going from the blue line to the middle green line or all the way to the top green line, and more importantly, staving off decline of that dark blue line, which is mild cognitive impairment, and the red line of dementia. We're not going to go into can you make a difference at the severe stage of dementia, or can you make a difference at MCI? The answer is yes, but it does depend on so many different factors. Certainly, we like to start in the preclinical phase at the latest, because that's when we can make the biggest change with people in terms of exercise programs and interventions. And we'd of course like to start in the middle-aged years before there's even a subjective memory loss, if that makes sense. So let's head over to the next slide. These are the cognitive skills that typically decline with aging, or do decline with aging. Dr. Howieson wrote a great paper on cognitive skills in the aging brain that talks about these. And cognitive abilities, you've probably heard of some of them. Memory is one of them, executive functioning is another one, attention is another one. Cognitive abilities are just mental abilities that allow us to interact with the world, have internal thoughts and tasks, have external thoughts and tasks, be able to go about daily functioning, and be able to do what makes us human. And so there's various domains of cognitive function, and these cognitive functions have subdomains of those domains. So there's different types of attention, there's different types of memory, there's different types of executive functioning. And so while we don't have time to define those in depth, these are just some that we'll keep in mind because they do relate to Tai Chi as well as other interventions. So the type of attention that's hindered when you age is what's called task switching. So switching from one thing to another, that could be switching from one exercise to another, or one task to another. It could be going from the computer to talking to someone at work to talking on the phone. And task switching is very, what we would call expensive and attentional resources. And people who decrease their task switching abilities tend to be more tired or feel slower in their switching. They can't switch as fast between these tasks, and they may not be as efficient in doing so. In addition, another type of attention that declines with aging is what's called divided attention. I wouldn't call it multitasking, but I would call it your attention's allocated towards two or more different streams of information. And so this could be talking while driving, talking while walking. You know, you're busy doing something at your computer while drinking water, or you have an active walking desk or something like that. You're dual tasking. You're doing a cognitive task and a physical task at the same time. At the very least, there's two things happening. And so these abilities decrease in efficiency and general ability over time across the normal course of cognitive aging. Then we have working memory, which, if you've heard of the visual-spatial sketch pad, it's your ability to store temporarily information in your brain. When we think of digits, we can memorize up to 7 digits at a time in our working memory, and that's why phone numbers are that length. But there's other types of ways working memory is processed, not just through digits or language, or it depends if it's an audible stimuli or a visual stimuli. The working memory isn't like other types of memory, but it is an important part of memory that's part of executive functions. It can decline with age. I think another one that's not a surprise to people is processing speed, which is the ability to move fast or react quickly. It's the speed and efficiency of neural resources in response to exogenous or endogenous stimuli, things happening on the inside or outside. And then we have visual perceptual abilities, the ability to take in information from the outside, perceive what it is, and then be able to go through our attention processes and therefore our memory processes, and then use our processing speed to act properly and quickly about that thing we are perceiving. Then we have problem solving and decision making. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Here's another chart that kind of describes attention a little bit more in detail. The reason we're hammering home attention is because it's ever so present in Tai Chi and ever so lacking in our modern day. Selective attention is the ability to focus despite distractions. So imagine me giving this webinar in a busy Starbucks versus being in my office and having full attention. The latter would be sustained attention, where I have the full ability to focus and there's no distractions. The first example would be the ability to focus despite distractions. With age, there's a slight decrease in this ability, and since I mentioned sustained attention at the bottom of the chart, there's actually no effect in sustained attention to be able to pay attention to one task consistently. There might be some changes with adult onset ADHD. There's all sorts of other factors that could change sustained attention, but with the normal course of cognitive aging, there's not much of a change. We talked about divided attention, which I said it's not technically multitasking, but some people call it that. What I refer to divided attention as is dual tasking, which is not multitasking, a single cognitive task and a physical task simultaneously. Regardless of the definition, divided attention is decreased with age over time significantly. And then attention switching, the ability to switch from one task to another, is much reduced. Go to the next slide here. This is a great chart because it doesn't just show the cognitive constructs in those domains. It really gives us a nice idea of what actually contributes to things that allow us to modify that cognitive trajectory I showed you earlier. And so we have two types of neuroplasticity. We have positive neuroplasticity. And if you don't know by now, the neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change, as a very rudimentary definition. So positive neuroplasticity is something that we're looking for. And we see all of these potential interventions or factors that could influence positive neuroplasticity, from cognitive remediation to active lifestyle to antioxidants and good nutrition, sleep hygiene, good mood, good health, physical exercise. I want to emphasize that if you have physical exercise but none of the other ones, the amount of positive neuroplasticity you'll get probably isn't as much. And so I think people look for silver bullets. I think they read a research article or a news article misinterpreting research, and they think one thing is required for positive neuroplasticity. I just want to drive home it's all of these factors and more. And if you look at the flip side of that, of negative neuroplasticity, you'll see that. So if you have good physical exercise, but they're not stimulating, you have poor nutrition, you're not sleeping well, you're depressed, that's probably not a good thing. You're probably not going to see a lot of significant results. That doesn't mean if the first thing you start to implement is physical exercise that you wouldn't see good results. You probably would. But that's not the only thing you need to do. So as health and wellness professionals and for ourselves, we need to be looking at what's in our scope of practice. How can we refer to allied health professionals and making sure all these bases are covered? But as we know, we're really helpful in the physical exercise domain. And if you're into health coaching or nutrition coaching, the nutrition domain. And if you want to take your health coaching a little further, helping to encourage people to engage in activities that are cognitively stimulating and mood enhancing, as well as engage with sleep hygiene practices. So when we have positive neuroplasticity, we increase synaptic density, we increase the connections between neurons, and therefore improve our cognitive reserve, which influences that cognitive trajectory. That would therefore improve certain cognitive abilities and contribute to improved everyday functioning. Let's go to the next slide here. We're not going to spend too much time on neuroanatomy, but I'll talk about one of my favorites, the prefrontal cortex. Really, the prefrontal cortex is part of what makes us human and houses what's called executive functions. It's these foundational cognitive abilities that include inhibiting actions or words or thoughts, attention, and we talked about different types of attention, mostly working memory, not just memory in general. Memory is found to be responsible in other parts of the brain as well, such as the hippocampus, which can improve size with exercise and those positive neuroplasticity-related factors. We have planning, organization, and emotional regulation, all very important things. And executive functions can be weakened by cognitive and neurological conditions, such as dementia, mild cognitive impairment, and other things like multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease you might run into being a health and wellness professional, especially if you're catering to the aging market. I think one thing to really appreciate about the prefrontal cortex is we want to improve these abilities over time. Executive functioning does decrease with age. With people with ADHD like myself, there's sort of a dysfunctional series of activities in the prefrontal cortex. Now, I want to say that with every dysfunction comes a strength, but we probably want to look at improving these executive functions. Now, not pictured here is a structure of the brain called the basal ganglia, and the basal ganglia is responsible for storing automatic movement. I think a majority of what we do in fitness is really looking at routines and cardiovascular machines and repeating the movements we're already familiar with. And the issue there's no issue with that in particular, except that automatic movements are less likely to engage the prefrontal cortex. So one of my life's mission is to get our industry to realize we should be engaging in activities every time we work out that really focus on engaging the prefrontal cortex a little bit more. And there's several ways of doing that. One of the ways is allocating attention, engaging in something that's emotionally attractive and that people believe in. It's motivating. There's novelty and variability, but there's other ways of doing that. So the prefrontal cortex is very important to keep in mind as we discuss the benefits of Tai Chi, as well as other modalities and exercise for brain health. We'll go to the next slide here. So looking on the right-hand side, let's define Tai Chi. Tai Chi has been described as an exercise, a dance, a method of achieving mental peace and relaxation, and a philosophy of life. I'm sure Diane and I could dissect that, disagree with things, agree with things, but it's a helpful way of looking at it. It includes the coordination of continuous rhythmic movements with a dynamic weight shifting and single limb support. And I really like that. When I see something that's a continuous rhythmic movement, that is a value proposition for me as a health professional and for my clients and patients that I work with for various reasons. Now, it doesn't mean Tai Chi is the only thing that has continuous rhythmic motion. Things like dance, which is also considered mind-body exercise, probably fall under a similar category, but there's various distinct differences. Could I teach movements with things like active motion or vipers that are loaded implements with continuous and rhythmic movement with dynamic weight shifting? Absolutely. And I think another component of Tai Chi is that it's a bit slower typically. It's also a bit, it's typically unloaded. I wouldn't imagine you're doing this with dumbbells. And so those are some other specific characteristics that are listed here. Looking in the upper left, as a mind-body exercise, referred here as an MB exercise, Tai Chi implements cognitive tools of both visualization and focused internal awareness. That's probably going to train aspects of attention, just as meditation or yoga would, as well as incorporate different other cognitive functions like emotional regulation abilities, which is part of that prefrontal cortex and executive function related set of abilities, as well as being able to engage in things like metacognition, awareness of self. The square below that there says Tai Chi exercise increases self-awareness. At the same time, it relaxes the mind and body. I think we devalue the value of relaxation in the health and fitness industry. Autonomic nervous system regulation is probably one of the first steps in even losing weight and regulating the HPA axis or even just regulating the autonomic nervous system so that cognitive abilities can take a little bit more of a spotlight. Then in the upper right, we have Tai Chi saying that Tai Chi trains attention in a dual task fashion. I think we could compare that with the divided attention description we gave earlier, with the eyes focusing on the leading arm and the mind focusing on the breathing and movement sequence. Now, that's not exclusively how Tai Chi employs dual tasking or divided attention. And I want to emphasize that something like Tai Chi that's already been established and has so much structure is a great way to train dual tasking. Remember, we talked about how divided attention significantly decreases with age. So it really behooves us to integrate different interventions that train those cognitive functions of dual tasking and divided attention. Lastly, other cognitive components include movement recall, i.e. working memory being a part of that, switching, i.e. task switching, which we said is much reduced with age, and spatial orientation, probably synonymous with visual perceptual abilities that require attention and executive control. We've already talked about how attention and executive control can decline with age. So if you're not convinced by now, you're probably not paying attention. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Other components of Tai Chi include coordinated movement, rhythmic breathing, a state of relaxation, attentional control, and a focus on mind. Now, you don't have to do Tai Chi to get elements of these once again. It just so happens that it's easier that a system's been figured out, and Diane's created a system to easily implement this and have all these components at once, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But you can certainly start to say, okay, if there's benefits in Tai Chi in the various domains here, why can't I start pulling one or more of these characteristics and putting them into everything I do? Not everything, but only where it's appropriate in your exercise program, but also just in adopting Tai Chi as a whole. Let's go to the next slide. There's a nice infographic here. I don't know the validity of every claim, but I would probably agree with them. I probably won't read them off now, but I'll read some of them. Improves memory, calms the mind, reduces stress, reduces depression, anxiety. I would say, I haven't looked into every single claim here, but these are probably based in research. I think there's a lot of great research on Tai Chi on the cognitive and mood effects. I think there's some other characteristics that it breaks down. It's slow motion, low impact, it's meditative, it's a mind-body exercise, and appropriate for all fitness levels. And so if you want to read through that a little bit more, you're welcome to. But because of these properties, mind-body exercise such as Tai Chi is considered a combination of physical exercise and intellectual experience, or what I like to call cognitive stimulation, which in turn may have greater cognitive benefits than other forms of exercise such as walking and jogging. Now, we're not saying Tai Chi is better than walking and jogging. And we know that walking and jogging also has cognitive benefits, so it behooves us as a health and wellness professional to integrate a structured variety of these. But I think it's important to recognize we hear about Tai Chi and we're probably not thinking of the value of it from a cognitive or brain health standpoint. This is a great justification for that. Intellectual experience and physical exercise are two approaches that influence cognitive functioning. Mind-body exercise is a combination of the two. And mind-body exercise, which is a subcategory of physical exercise, has been used for a long time in the East, is now gaining popularity and interest in the West. And so there's many people who've done martial arts or sports or Tai Chi for a while that roll their eyes and say, well, I told you so, and it's been like this for a while now. It's just with more time and more acceptance of this methodology, as well as research coming out demonstrating the varied and diverse benefits, I think people are gaining more of a popular adoption of these types of methods. Let's go to the next slide here. Here's another chart that explains it quite well. Tai Chi has 3 different components that we could look at from a brain health standpoint: cognitive stimulation, physical activity, and social interaction. The physical activity itself allows for an increase in neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells, angiogenesis, the growth of new blood vessels, and the reduction of brain inflammation. That can lead to the remediation of neural cell death and dysfunction in normal aging to a certain degree, and help to reduce pathological aging, including Alzheimer's disease. And while there is good research showing that Tai Chi can not reverse, but help ameliorate some of the symptoms associated with Alzheimer's disease, I don't think we can imagine we incorporate Tai Chi and reverse these conditions, but it certainly helps stave them off and improve cognitive abilities and mood conditions and fall risk despite that. With cognitive stimulation and social interaction, we know from research that will also slow cognitive decline. So it's really great that we can get a variety of these things in a single modality. Let's go to the next slide here. I think it's also important that when we're talking about skilled exercise, which Tai Chi, if taught properly and structured properly, can be, and there's a skilled exercise-induced dopamine loop. So we talked about the basal ganglia earlier, and I hope I didn't villainize it for you, where we talked about automatic movement because it's very helpful for releasing dopamine. It plays a significant role in the motor learning process, and now we see a relationship between dopamine, the basal ganglia, and the prefrontal cortex here. You certainly don't need to memorize the name of the circuits, but really what we need to take away is that when we are engaging in skilled exercise, we're engaging a multitude of these brain regions that are beneficial, not just to cognition, but brain health and activity, as well as on a neurochemical basis, such as dopamine, which is deficient in conditions such as Parkinson's disease, but also the dopaminergic neurons decrease efficiency and activity over time with the normal course of cognitive aging. So it really behooves us to look at incorporating skilled exercise, Tai Chi being one of them, in our exercise programs because of this. Go to the next slide. Another part we haven't talked about yet is the cerebellum, which is responsible for movement coordination and also has a role in attention and mood regulation. I think people read about the cerebellum very briefly and think it only coordinates movement, but more research is coming out to show its interaction and relationship with mood and cognition, which I think is very impressive. It's also responsible for, let's just say it's going to be involved in complex motor skill and skill learning. And in rats, it's been complex motor skill training has been shown to increase nerve cell volume and the number of blood vessels. And coordinative exercise can also play a role in increasing focus and attention. So in Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment, which we defined earlier, let's talk about the role of Tai Chi with that, because we're all probably thinking of someone we know or clients or patients that we know or work with that are either risk it for this or have this. And either you've been struggling to engage them in your services, or you've been wondering how you can help them, and here's a great way of doing that. And so after the onset of Alzheimer's disease, memory function is one of the first domains of cognitive function to be affected and to deteriorate the most in the whole entire course of Alzheimer's disease. Now, since Tai Chi exercises can improve memory function of older adults, and this has been demonstrated in multiple populations, genders, ages, practicing Tai Chi might be able to reduce the incidence of Alzheimer's disease. We say might, because even though there's exciting research, we don't want to jump to conclusions and make a blanket statement, and even slow its progression after onset. The preventative effects of Tai Chi exercise on executive function may also reduce the incidence of Alzheimer's disease. You do want to contract Tai Chi. That's something we're looking at. There's my cognitive functions for you. And then declining in executive function is not a major risk factor of Alzheimer's disease. However, it's strongly associated with the early deterioration of physical performance, such as fall risk and gait dysfunction, and individuals with amnestic mild cognitive impairments. Let's go to the next slide here. So a great meta-analysis from Wu et al. 2013 demonstrated that a simplified form of Tai Chi, and I want to emphasize this, I'm sure Diane has something to say about it, that typically when people are trying to consume Tai Chi in from a quote unquote master or studio, they try to make it too complex, and that makes it harder to adhere to. But also, let's just talk about what a simplified form of Tai Chi was able to do. It was specifically designed for the elderly. Sounds a lot like your course, Diane. And improved cognitive functions, as well as coordinated cognitive integration of attention, voluntary motor actions and postural control. Verbal and visual memory required during Tai Chi practice may provide additional cognitive stimulation. I'm thinking of that chart with social stimulation as well. Tai Chi exercise would have cognitive benefits on global cognitive function and memory function, especially verbal working memory. However, the cognitive benefits over executive function did not show consistency from the combined studies. And what that means is we're just not yet conclusive of, does Tai Chi improve those executive functions that we talked about earlier? Some studies say it does significantly, and some studies say it does not significantly. And I think it's important to approach it from a perspective of, we're not entirely sure, but we do know that Tai Chi could help. And even if it doesn't improve executive functions in certain populations, it certainly challenges them. And so if it doesn't improve executive functions, it's certainly a cognitively stimulating exercise that demands cognitive control, especially in executive functions. Let's go to the next slide here. There's some in-session variables that we should consider, and the research has considered and varied as well, that may play a role in the cognitive outcomes as well as the physical outcomes of Tai Chi. Those would be duration, frequency, the method of instruction. And when I say the method of instruction, how well it's taught, how it's taught, the variability in which it's taught, and also things that we might not be thinking of. How much do the participants actually believe in the power of Tai Chi to make a change? That also plays a role in the cognitive outcomes. I wouldn't just say it's a placebo effect, but if someone's engaged versus hating what they're doing, they're probably more likely to sustain cognitive benefit. And there's been research comparing participation in martial arts, and one group hates it and the other group loves it, and there is a significant difference in cognitive abilities, and that's not just placebo. If you're motivated and you're engaged in something, you're enjoying yourself, you're certainly going to release a lot of neurotransmitters associated with that are probably more geared towards the positive neuroplasticity side of things. And then also variability and novelty. I think people hear these two words a lot, but don't actually know what they mean. And being able to, I think it also stresses out the clients when they say, well, I'm just getting on a routine, I'm just trying to adopt this. Why do I have to switch it up? And I think that's the role of the health and fitness professional, is to structure variability and teach novelty in various ways well. Let's go to the next slide. So I wouldn't say these are the ultimate prescriptions, but this is some of the research that I was looking at in preparation for this presentation. This was their methodology or recommendations. I would say minimum 2 times a week for 20 minutes. I think that's very realistic. It is the minimum required dose to get cognitive benefits of Tai Chi, probably after a minimum of 3 to 6 months before seeing those benefits. Another study showed that 50 minutes 3 times a week, ideally practiced for 1 year, showed the most global cognitive outcomes. But 6 months of practice also demonstrated improved memory and brain-derived neurotrophic factor upregulation, BDNF, also known as miracle growth of the brain. It's a trophic factor and a protein that signals neurogenesis. Then we have 50 minutes, another study showed 50 minutes, 3 times a week for 12 weeks. So a shorter program, significantly improved executive functions. We know to take that lightly because there's different things that these studies are showing, but that's still encouraging. And that was an at-home program. I think that's really important because in keeping the accessibility of Tai Chi high, I think the fact that we're able to show changes in cognitive function from an at-home program over a short course of time, 12 weeks, that's pretty encouraging for people. And even if you don't see room to incorporate Tai Chi in your practice now, which I'd have a hard time seeing why that might be, but say you're at a CrossFit gym, it just doesn't fit, it's too much of a cultural change, but you're really training clients there and you think they could benefit, you could certainly find an at-home solution for Tai Chi, which I know Diane has. And that's very difficult to find. I've had a lot of struggle finding ways of getting patients and clients to engage in Tai Chi on their own, and I'm really grateful that Diane's created a solution for that. And then another one is 60 to 120 minutes a week at a moderate intensity. Now, I will say that specific piece of information came from a study also looking at other mind-body exercises, such as dance. So if you did 30 minutes of Tai Chi and 30 minutes of dance, or 60 minutes of Tai Chi and 60 minutes of dance. I think that's helpful, especially because they have variable intensities, but it was looking at mind-body exercise as a whole. Let's go to the next slide here. I think it's important to keep in mind that as we're teaching Tai Chi, as well as any skill, whether it be a dual task condition or any exercise, I think people have a hard time visualizing why individuals might get frustrated or bored with their routines. And we hear a lot about flow, and there's a lot of great neuroscience behind flow and in a lot of applications. But just as we're teaching movements, such as Tai Chi movements to individuals, most people are starting on the low skill level, and so they need a relatively easy task to engage in. But as they increase their skill level, this is where the novelty and variability should come in. We should increase their task difficulty to match their skill level. If their skills are not high enough and the challenge is too high, they're going to have anxiety, frustration, and fear of failure. And they probably won't express those things verbatim to you, but they might just not show up anymore, and you might be confused as to why they're not coming. Another reason would be, if they stop coming or they're not really enjoying their intervention as much, whether it be Tai Chi or something else, their skill level might be too high. You may have not progressed them, or you may need to take them from a group session to a one-on-one session. And that could be because they have boredom or routine or loss of interest. Now, I do want to emphasize that routine is not bad. It allows consistency and adherence, but it certainly would probably disengage someone. When we think of boredom or routine or loss of interest, that doesn't sound engaging, and engagement really focuses and allocates attentional resources. And so we want to keep that in mind as we're teaching. Let's go to the next slide. We talked earlier about that cognitive trajectory. What are the individual factors that could affect cognitive outcomes, not just of Tai Chi, but any intervention in general? I think it's really important to keep these in mind, because we hear this research, we preach neuroplasticity, we hear about that, we get really excited, we think we do, one cognitively stimulating exercise, oh, the whole brain's changing, gotta love neuroplasticity. And that may be true on a smaller scale, but we really should appreciate the individual factors that can either get better results or inhibit us from getting the results we hope for. That would be age. And so while you are neuroplastic, you have neuroplastic abilities to change well into your 90s that we now know, the amount of effort that requires increases with age. Your current cognitive status. So while there's research to support the benefits of Tai Chi and cognition and brain health across various populations and ages and cognitive statuses, from childhood to adolescence all the way up to people with severe dementia, those effects will be different because of where they are at in their stage of life, as well as where they're coming from. Their gender would make a difference, recognizing that there's estrogen receptors in the brain, and women are a bit more predisposed for Alzheimer's disease and cognitive impairment more than men for various factors. So gender does play a role, but it's not just the neurobiological indices. It's also or hormones. It's also psychological factors, or people thinking Tai Chi is more for a specific gender or what have you. That can play a role. Biological and psychological factors. If someone is, they have different biomarkers that indicate that they can't participate or affects their participation in Tai Chi. Or let's say someone has high blood pressure. Tai Chi can certainly help with that, but let's say they also need to engage in more moderate to vigorous aerobic exercise, but they think Tai Chi is the only thing they should engage in. That will hinder the potential cognitive outcomes, especially since there's a significant correlation between blood pressure regulation and cognitive function. So that's important to keep in mind. Psychological, not just from a motivational standpoint, but are these people, do they have depression? Do they have anxiety? Certainly Tai Chi can improve that, but whether they have certain things or not and the severity of which they have them will determine the types of outcomes they can have, and probably also dictate how and why they do or do not adhere. There's health-related outcomes and, of course, environmental outcomes. We'll go to the next slide. Here's some citations. We're not going to spend too much time on this slide. I just want to say that there's so much research to go over, and if you just go on Google Scholar and type in Tai Chi and cognition or brain health, and insert your population you want to see the effects in here, adolescence, mild cognitive impairment, dementia. I certainly encourage you to read more, but here are just some of the research articles I used to get some of the information that was presented to you today. And then I do want to talk about what we're doing at the Pacific Brain Health Center, where I currently work. work as a research associate and a brain health coach. We are excited to be launching what's called the prevention trial, which is funded by the Institute of Systems Biology, and it's in association with Providence St. Joseph's Health and the Providence Healthcare System. The Pacific Brain Health Center, that logo down at the lower left, is currently where I work, and we're conducting the study. There's a reason I'm telling you about this. This does relate to Tai Chi, and I hope it helps you see the bigger picture here. We're starting with 60 participants with mild cognitive impairment, ages 50 to 80. We're collecting a ridiculous amount of neurocognitive biomarkers, clinical labs, neuroimaging, cognitive testing, and genetics. In the intervention with 30 of these participants is supportive brain health coaching, diet, cognitive stimulation, and exercise. And we're running what's called cognitive fitness, or CogFit. It's a program that incorporates multiple modalities of exercise, and multiple modalities of exercise is what's been shown to have the most significant cognitive benefit in this population. And so a lot of people ask, hey, what's the best form of exercise? And because of the density of research and the coverage, a lot of people think that's aerobic exercise. Well, we talked about the prefrontal cortex and how different types of exercise like Tai Chi improve or change the cognitive outcomes you get. And so the CogFit program is 90 minutes. They're going to repeat it for twice a week for about 3 months within this study, and then we're going to encourage them to adopt various modalities they experience on their own for the rest of the year. A significant part of that is mind-body exercise, components of dance, martial arts, and in every session we have Tai Chi, and there's a reason we're doing that, and I hope we convey that reason here. The study goal is to improve cognitive functioning, and the end goal, which I think is quite impressive and still sometimes a bit over my head, which is improved precision medicine prescriptions based on personalized data clouds. And what that means is from these neurocognitive biomarkers we're getting at the start of the study and these multimodal approaches that we're implementing as our intervention, we're hoping to make all these correlations, and you can see this connectome down below between all these pieces of health data that we can then not just specifically prescribe nutrition, but also specifically prescribe types of exercise. Tai Chi is undoubtedly one of those modalities. And we're just trying to get more information on how we would use it, how we would recommend it in relation to brain health. And I do want to preface that, the emphasis is not on a single modality. It's an inclusive, structured, variable approach, but also a personalized approach based on an individual's biomarkers. So if we're looking at cortisol or C-reactive protein, which is inflammatory, or we look at their cognitive functioning tests and we see, oh, this person needs to improve their memory function, well, Tai Chi, based on the evidence we just looked at, would be a good way to do that. And so we're starting that trial in a couple weeks here, and we're very excited to do so. Next slide. If you're looking to get involved or learn more, as Diane mentioned, I'm very excited to take a couple years' work and consolidate it into a course called the Brain Health Trainer course that we're launching in affiliation with the Functional Aging Institute. And that's part of the Open the Door to Tai Chi course as well. We're excited to partner with Diane and FAI on being able to deliver this. The course is a course that will teach you about the neuroscience of exercise. It would also teach you about how to assess someone's cognitive abilities as a baseline subjectively within your scope of practice, learn who to refer to and how to refer to assess brain health, people like neurologists and psychiatrists, but also how to create, based on the evidence, a structured, variable, or multimodal exercise program that would contribute to brain health. And so instead of hypertrophy or power or weight loss or mobility, we're saying, hey, you could have the outcomes of executive function or memory, processing speed, attention, and you would pick one of those as your end goal. And if you do that, how do you do that? And we have a specialized intake process for determining that. How do you get people motivated and understanding why they're doing that and why they should be doing that, and conveying that to your clients and or patients, and then being able to create a multimodal exercise and physical activity plan that helps them get them there over the course of several months. So we're very excited to come out with this course in a matter of a couple of weeks. If you're looking to sign up for the course, you can go to somatic, somatic.co/course. You can email me directly if you have any questions about this course, this presentation, or anything in general at rglatt8@gmail.com. That's my direct email. If you want to learn more about the Pacific Brain Health Center, you can email me or go to pacificbrainhealth.org. I would ask if that you're interested in visiting the center or referring someone to the center, please email me first. That's probably the easier way to go about it. We're based in Santa Monica, California. I do want to preface this that part of the Brain Health Trainer course is going to be recommending modalities of exercise that include cognitive components and physical components. And so you don't have to wait till the Brain Health Trainer course is out for me to recommend Tai Chi. It's something that I would expect everyone who goes through our course has an interest or existing proficiency in implementing, because it makes it a lot easier. It's so hard to refer out for this because there's just not a lot of resources out there, and Diane will talk more about that. So you can either get it before the course, with the course, or after the course, but we highly recommend it because we know the cognitive benefits are diverse and profound. And so with that, I really appreciate your time and attention, and I'm going to hand it over to Diane.
Ryan, thank you so much. I think this has just been fabulous to talk about Tai Chi and the importance of making sure that we're concerned with not only our own brain health, but those of our clients as well. And I know that we have some questions, but I want to go through some of what you had said about Tai Chi as being flow and being enjoyable. I think that's one of the important pieces, because that helps people adhere to a program. I mean, you did mention that, where you said, you know, people don't enjoy something, their brain is not as engaged. And what I've seen in my own studio and with the certification course and with the daily series of Tai Chi is people enjoy doing it, and that helps with adherence. They're not thinking, as they're doing it, they're not thinking, I'm improving my brain necessarily. They're thinking about enjoying Tai Chi. And I just want to briefly go through, this is doable. You can learn Tai Chi, and you can learn to teach it. That's part of what the Open the Door to Tai Chi system is all about, is making it accessible to everyone. With the certification, you don't have to know Tai Chi at all. We will help you. We'll help you learn the form. We'll help you learn the flow of the form. And we help you learn how to teach it. Remember, part of that, part of the variables that Ryan was talking about is knowing how to teach it. It's not just learning movements. It's about incorporating those underlying principles and being able to change up those variables so that your participants are getting the most of brain effects that they can. Open the Door to Tai Chi's certification course, we teach you how to do that. We also have a wonderful membership group that you're not out there alone. You have a community of instructors, and that's really important as well, because that support is important, that when you're teaching classes and maybe somebody else has an idea how to change it up so that you can get that variable, that novelty that Ryan was talking about. With the certification course, you do get CECs, which is important. We know that. With the Brain Health Trainer, you will be able to as well, I'm sure. If you're just interested in learning a little bit of Tai Chi, you're not sure that you want to teach it, that's okay too. This is the daily series that Ryan mentioned, and at home, these are online videos. You can just learn some Tai Chi and learn shorter forms and see how this helps you. You can feel that difference. This is a challenge for you, that you can do an at-home system and learn a little bit of Tai Chi. Maybe that's where you'll feel more comfortable, and then move into a class or even move into teaching it as well. This course is available, the certification course and the daily series. We have a discount today if you want to have go in and purchase at taichisystem.com. That is singular, taichisystem.com. It's 25% off, and that way you can get started doing some Tai Chi today. Let's look at some of the questions. Ryan, I really appreciate what you've done with this, and making sure that people are understanding brain health and doing the different variables. This is important for us as fitness professionals. We're not just dealing with the body, we're dealing with the whole person.
Right. Absolutely. And before we go to the questions, I just want to say, the structure that you've provided with Open the Door to Tai Chi, we talked about the cognitive outcomes of a 12-week program. Well, if you're doing it twice a week or 3 times a week and you got 24 lessons, that's that's a pretty great model right there. It seems to be in line with what the research is showing. And the at-home series as well, I think that could be structured for clients. Actually, I think I have enough motivation. I think it's ironic that I know the benefits, but I always do what I recommend to actually do this myself 3 times a week with the at-home series. Because I've, when I stopped practicing Qigong in the Shaolin Temple, one, it cost a lot of money, but he basically wanted me to live there, and it just wasn't realistic for me. And so,
Right.
I think, I kind of gave it up after that experience. And I'm always looking up YouTube videos, and it's never proficient enough for me to get the sort of instruction and adherence that I want for myself. So I appreciate you doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And that is our purpose, is to help people be able to learn it, and not just learn movements like learning on YouTube, but learning the actual principles that help drive these benefits. Well, one of the questions, Ryan, is, and you mentioned it a few times, but specifically this person wants to know, yoga is a mind-body exercise as well. Is it also good for cognitive improvement?
100%. And, it's probably classified under that mind-body category. I would say probably even slightly outside, not because it's not mind-body, but it's its own modality. A lot of people say yoga and Tai Chi.
Right.
I think they're different in a lot of ways.
Yes.
I don't want to say off the top of my head what the cognitive benefits are of yoga based on a meta-analysis, because I haven't created that presentation yet, but I'm willing to. But the answer is yes. Yoga absolutely provides a myriad of cognitive benefits. Off the top of my head, I can't confidently say which ones those are, but it would probably include executive function, working memory. It depends on the population, the type of yoga that's taught. I would say there's more variability in the yoga intervention than there would be with Tai Chi. That's not to say Tai Chi is less variable. There's just as many variables, but there's so many different types of yoga and different ways it could be applied that it probably, it expands the diversity of the research. So I think it depends on a variety of the variables we discussed, even for Tai Chi, things like duration, frequency, type, variability, method of instruction. And I wouldn't say that all yoga is created equally in terms of its effects on cognitive function, but I think most people who participate in it would agree they benefit from it tremendously, whether it's cognitive and or psychological and physical, of course. But it also depends on the type. I will say that Curtain Kriya, which is a form of meditation from the Kundalini traditions, is really well studied in mild cognitive impairment to significantly improve memory. And that's another thing we incorporate in our prevention trial and our multimodal CogFit programs, is we do Tai Chi, and then we don't do yoga, but we do Kundalini style meditation, just because there's so much evidence on this Curtain Kriya meditation and its effects on memory and mild cognitive impairment. And so once again, it goes back to the population, but in the type and all these variables, but the answer is yes.
And it's interesting because when you talk about meditation, and Tai Chi is movement meditation, it's not just an exercise, but it is that movement meditation. And there are a lot of studies about meditation and brain health as well. This is an interesting question here. How important is the social interaction piece of that cognitive improvement?
Very important. I would say that social isolation is one of the main reasons that people continue to decline. And either they speed up their decline or they start their decline in the first place. It doesn't really matter if it's the chicken or the egg. We just know social isolation is a major, major issue. And we are very bad at coming up with great solutions. Now, I think when I can recommend something that kind of triple dips on cognitive stimulation, physical exercise or mobility, as well as fall prevention as a subdomain of that, and social stimulation, I get very excited because it makes it easy to promote that one thing instead of 5 different things. And, with aging, in the various cognitive functions that decline with aging, behavior change can get more difficult. And so recommending things that kind of double or triple dip and address different modalities. I mean, hey, we didn't even talk about the benefits of Tai Chi on sleep quality. I mean, really, we're looking at the lowest hanging fruit that we can help people adopt in order to get the most brain benefit. And I would say it's a very important piece. I think people who are younger, such as myself, probably don't appreciate that until we experience social isolation. But then again, I take that back. Social isolation is a problem regardless of age, but especially apparent in older adulthood, as well as dementia and mild cognitive impairment. And so I would say it's very important. I wouldn't say, X percentage is responsible for that, but I'd say it's a tremendous part of it.
And I will just let everybody know the classes that I have here at my studio in Denver, that social piece is very important. And again, we're going back to that enjoyment of the activity, that they enjoy being together. And Tai Chi is a piece of that, where it's really a part of their lives. They look forward to class, they look forward to doing Tai Chi, but they look forward to each other. And so that kind of snowballs in that enjoyment arena. This is a question that kind of pigtails on that whole thing about classes and social. And I'm going to let you answer it, Ryan, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about it. Can you incorporate Tai Chi into training sessions to help cognitive development, or does it really just have to be in a class with that flow, as you talked about, that would make it work?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I assume that's in relation to sequestering the cognitive benefits.
Yes.
I think it makes sense. If you're doing heavy deadlifts and you're doing Tai Chi during your rest periods, that could be helpful, but it could also downregulate the nervous system too much so to decrease performance. So as long as it doesn't interfere and increase the injury risk of what you're doing, I'm okay with it. In fact, I would encourage, as an active rest period, it's possible to do that. I think it has a lot of value there. However, I also think there's value to structured, 15 to 20 minutes at the minimum of Tai Chi at the end of the session. And so I think you can do it as a structured block, maybe as a cool down or a warm up, what have you. You can do it as an actual class, and you can do it as rest periods. I will say that the trend seems to be, with anything that's cognitively demanding and physically demanding, the more practice and time you can get, the better. And so I would say that it is possible, but I would start to use that as a launch pad to kind of nudge them towards dedicated time specifically for something like Tai Chi. But I think it can work in any way. I don't think you lose in any of those situations. And if you go from something like resistance training to Tai Chi, you're going from something from loaded to unloaded. You're going from something that's probably linear in nature to multiplanar. And you're going from something that's usually faster to slower. And I think that is variability. The way you structure that is up to you. I think it's a longer conversation of why and how we would do that. But I think the answer would be yes for that.
And I agree with that completely. We use Tai Chi in our training sessions, not in every single session, but when it's needed, when that, as a cool down, it's outstanding. As a warm up, it's outstanding. It helps with people not only with maybe dipping into that parasympathetic system. Like you said, we don't want to downregulate if you're trying to accomplish something heavy. However, it does help when I'm talking about balance, when somebody is struggling with their balance in just a regular training session, and I can talk about the principles, talk about your columns, talk about moving from your dantian, which that's all part of that Tai Chi. If I can get them to think about the way they're moving in a different way because I'm using Tai Chi examples or Tai Chi words, that imagery, that visualization, that really helps people in their training sessions as well. I've seen that here in my studio.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, because Tai Chi is a form of physical and intellectual stimulation, it pairs well with things that may have less of that. But also, let's continue with the resistance training example. And let's say it's not contraindicated to do that. You're not downregulating the system too much. Maybe the movements are a bit faster. You're not so focused on the breathing, but really it's the dynamic weight shifting and the coordination. You know, it's great because then you're almost doing a superset of intellectual activity. And you may ask, well, why is resistance training intellectual activity? But it's been shown in various meta-analyses. One of the main researchers is Teresa Lou Ambrose out of Vancouver, to show that executive functioning can significantly increase with resistance training. And she proposes that resistance training is a form of cognitive training. And so to be able to do that, and then something like a modification or a faster version of Tai Chi, instead of just, you know, walking around, hands on your hips, breathing and looking at the TV, you know, you're staying in, you're engaged. And a lot of people do that. They're not doing a lot during their rest periods. I really like the idea.
Yes. Yes. There's a lot of different ways to incorporate Tai Chi. And I want to encourage everyone that it is easy to learn. And easy is a funny word. I mean, it does take a lot of, obviously, we've been talking about it. It takes a lot of your brain to figure out these new movements, yes. But it doesn't have to be intimidating. That's part of the open the doors. What we're all about here is to make it less intimidating so that the people that really can benefit from Tai Chi can be incorporating it into their lives, not only for brain health, but for reducing stress and anxiety, for improving balance, all of these things. Tai Chi is just one of those wonderful forms of exercise that is an important piece of the puzzle, I think, for everyone to include. So Ryan, I really appreciate your time today. I want to make sure that we are ending here on time. So we don't have any more questions. I just appreciate your time. And if anybody wants to get in touch with Ryan, it is rglatt8@gmail.com, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, you're welcome to contact me there.
Okay.
And I'm happy to entertain any conversation, whether it's about research, the course, or otherwise. Awesome.
Thank you so much. And if you have any other questions, like I said, you can contact Ryan or you can contact me, Diane, and that is 2 N's, Diane@taichisystem.com. Hope everybody has a good day. Talk to you later.